o'clock, so I'm going to open our meeting. Welcome everybody. We are videoing and live streaming this meeting, and if you can just wait for me to announce you before speaking so that people know who's speaking. Request that mobile devices be turned off or to silent. We have all elected members present, in attendance, We have all present except for Councillor Mike Dutta, who is on video, so he's present, and that's still allowed under the state government's regulations about attendance at meetings that came out of COVID. I think it's finishing up quite soon, but that's allowed. We don't have a CEO at the moment. Our CEO is on leave with a bad tooth, so Kat Panjari is acting CEO tonight. So welcome, Kat. Moving on to the acknowledgement of country, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting tonight on the traditional land of the Muwinina people, who were the original custodians of Wiluna, Hobart, and lived here for thousands of generations before Europeans arrived in 1804 and changed the lives of the Muwinina forever. And I'd also like to acknowledge the contemporary Palawa community for their role as custodians of Lutruwita and acknowledge their elders past and present. Thank you. So we need to confirm the minutes of the 20th of February meeting. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Barakis.
Lord Mayor, there was a workshop missing off the minutes.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, and I've got that. I have got that in, so I'll talk to that when we get to that. And then it'll be the old minutes, was it?
No, I think you're right. I think it's upcoming.
Okay. Yeah, for this minutes, the next minutes, yes. Okay, any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Transfer of agenda items. Are there any matters that anyone would like to propose are transferred? Councillor Sherlock.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I was wondering if it was possible to transfer supplementary item number 12. The Hobart Stadium Feasibility Plan and Profits Report. Closed supplementary, yeah. And I wanted to ask a question with regards to the closed item number 9 and just some advice on that.
First, I'll just move the first one. So I'll move for this item 12.
Advice, please.
Just waiting for 12. Oh, you want advice on the 12?
On
9.
On the same proposal to put into the open.
Advice.
No cautionary advice? Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to move that one first. So all those in favour of moving 12 into the open, say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. It's carried unanimously. Now, item 9. So Councillor Sherlock has asked for some advice about that. So you're proposing to move that into the open, Councillor Sherlock?
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Alderman Zuko and sorry.
I just want to make a point. I just have a quick look at it. The component of it that I consider would be inappropriate to release would be the agreement that's on there, but the report itself can be moved into council. That's my view.
Okay, sure.
But not the agreement, because the agreement's a contractual matter.
Sure. So the report, Director Cooper, would you like to provide some advice on moving that into the open?
Thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor, there is an attachment to the closed report that contains some commercial incompetence information that was given to us by a third party. They've requested if that report was released that information be redacted.
So moving the item 9 into the open minus the attachments, but including the officer's report. Deputy.
Is there not benefit to discuss the matter in closed and then shift the outcome into the open?
Yes, that's a decision for all of the councillors, really.
Right, because I certainly would have questions which refer to the report, so I don't know that I would support it.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
I don't mind the decision going into the open, but...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, so maybe just...
Sorry, Councillor Sherlock.
Sorry, maybe considering what Councillor Burnett, Deputy Lord Mayor, has said, should we move towards that instead, to have it discussed in closed and have it...
Well, you'd be withdrawing your motion then, Councillor Sherlock, because if you want to transfer it to the open, it needs to be discussed in the open. Sorry, I need to... Did you want to still go with your motion, Councillor Sherlock?
Look, Lord Mayor, just in the interest of maybe the third-party licence agreement, I understand what Alderman Zuko is saying as well, and I understand what the Deputy Lord Mayor is saying, so maybe we'll just leave it closed. I'm happy for that, or we just take it to vote.
All right. If you're... Okay, I don't have a motion in front of me now that's been withdrawn, so does anyone else want to transfer any agenda items?
Yeah, well, I'll just withdraw that, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Okay. All right, so no other transfer of agenda items? We'll move on to communications from the Chair. I don't have any tonight. So item 5 is notification of council workshops. They are listed in the agenda and attendance as well. Yes, Councillor Loberger.
Just wanted to raise the fact that the 27th of February workshop, I actually attended it, and I'm not there as attending or apologising.
Okay.
I could never forget Mr. Ort's speech at the start of that workshop.
Okay. So that'll be reflected in the minutes. Okay, so we had the Monday the 27th of February, and that was a presentation by DFAT. There was also a discussion about the population strategy consultation paper and a rating strategy review. Then on Tuesday the 14th of March there was a workshop about the budget, the upcoming budget, and Salamanca licence fees. And there was an additional workshop held since the agenda was published, and that was on the 16th of March, and that covered councillor behaviour and conduct, overview of the Anti-Discrimination Act and cyber safety. So those 3 workshops, would someone like to move that we receive a note? Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again say no. Carried unanimously. Public question time now. So we do have one question that we've received on notice, and there may be another one from the floor. So is Trenton Hoare here? Would you like to come forward and ask your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Considering the CEO is not here tonight, I will direct my question to the acting CEO. So my question is to the acting CEO through the Lord Mayor. Do you think it's right to have a councillor who stages protests with legitimately recognised extremist hate groups on council property to the detriment of council-owned businesses and makes employees and users feel unsafe as a chair of the council committee, which its main aim is to maintain the health and well-being of the citizens of Hobart? A councillor who actively uses their privileged position as an elected member to do the exact opposite to that aim and target minority groups, individual members of the community and colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Hoare. I'll ask the acting CEO to respond.
Thank you for your question, Trenton. The conduct and behaviour of elected members is regulated by the Council's Elected Member Code of Conduct. If a person is aggrieved by the conduct or behaviour of an elected member, then the appropriate avenue to pursue this is through the making of a complaint through the Code of Conduct process. It is recognised that elected members have a right to express personal views on particular matters, provided that they make it clear that they are expressing a personal view on the matter and not representing the view of the Council. I, along with elected members, have an obligation to provide a safe workplace for Council staff, and elected members have a duty to keep themselves and others safe whilst in the workplace. I am currently investigating the circumstances, or the CEO is currently investigating the circumstances regarding a recent protest that occurred on Council's property to ensure that our obligations under work, health and safety legislation are being met. Creating an equitable and inclusive community is a core part of the City's work. Priorities are delivered through a variety of projects, initiatives and partnerships. This work is outlined in a range of strategies and plans across the organisation. One key policy endorsed by Council in 2021 is Hobart, a City for All, the City of Hobart's community inclusion and equity framework. It outlines the City's role in creating a City for All and provides a framework for action. To become a City for All, we must work towards inclusion and equity for all who live, work or play in Hobart. We know there is systemic exclusion, discrimination and inequity in our city, and understand that this demands systemic and structural solutions. We work closely with those who face additional barriers to participation, including Aboriginal people, children and young people, people experiencing homelessness, LGBTIQ+ communities, multicultural communities, older people and people with a disability. The City of Hobart is a proud supporter of LGBTIQ+ communities and is guided by the Council-endorsed LGBTIQ+ commitment from 21 to 2023. The elected members of the City of Hobart clearly play an important role in pursuing these strategic objectives. So thank you, Trenton. A copy of this response will be provided to you in writing.
Go ahead.
So I know and congratulate the Council for having a Harmony Day event tomorrow called Diversity Discussion, with the first topic being anti-discrimination as a human right. The irony with this is that there is a fake feminist anti-trans rally happening tomorrow, which is openly discriminatory. Particular councillors have endorsed this event. So my question is, why won't the Hobart City Council call on hate-spreading councillors to stop their antics if the council is in full support of hosting events such as Diversity Council and having action plans such as the LGBTIQ+ commitment and the one just mentioned in the previous?
Okay, thank you, Trenton. We'll take that on notice. Provide a response later. Another question, public question from the floor. Chris Merridew, would you like to come forward?
Thank you all. Sorry to come back with information to you beforehand, but it's become apparent over this week that the Howler statue is to come forward from the last meeting of the Dying Council, whereby the procedure to Council to consider removing the statue. Now, my question is, with my heritage hat and my great concern about the heritage area of that statue and its street stand, it is very, very sensitive area, as everybody in this council appreciates. And my question of you is, the council is, when formal process for public processing of what the council may choose to do about the statute, if it's removed, and is the council considering that there is the other side of the story portrayed in Paper Square, using three vacant seats that are on the three vacant places that are on the prints of the Howler statue. Obviously, it's a long time since it came before the previous council. It's been very quiet, and with my heritage interest, I'm very concerned to be aware of what is.
Sure. Okay. I'll have a go at answering your question. The council decision was in August. The council decision was in August 2022, which was the in-principle decision of the council to remove the statue. So it wasn't the last meeting of the council. It was before that. Second question is, at the moment there is a conservation management plan amendment that it has been advertised, it has sought public submissions. If you haven't been sent that, we can arrange to send that to you. You might be interested in that document, and that will come back to the council within a few weeks. And then after that process has been considered, the next step would be a planning permit, and that's also within a few weeks or maybe a month or two. So we can provide a more detailed response with some more exact data in terms of dates to you in the next few days. Thank you, Chris.
Will this be advertised as a DA with a normal board?
Yes. Yes, all of that would be the same. Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions from the floor? There being none, we'll move on now to item 7, which is petitions. I don't think we have any, no. Supplementary items in the open, we don't have any. Item 9 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Would anyone like to declare any conflicts in an item on the open council agenda? There being none, we will now move on to item 10, officer reports. Item 10 is strategic priorities and annual plan progress report for the period ending 31 December 2022. Would someone like to move the recommendation that it be received and noted? Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Possart, looks as though you're hopping up. Yes?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I just wanted to note a couple of things. I've read the document in full, and I think it's great to see a few things that have been processed through the organisation that I'd draw your attention to, including accessible footpaths being built with examples on Lansdowne Crescent and Petty Street, Patrick Street and Elizabeth Street, Newtown Road and Cross Street, Newtown, as well as noting that the design process is well underway for Argyle Street and Campbell Street protected bike lanes, which many cyclists will be happy to see. There's also some work being done towards moving our fleet towards hybrid and electric vehicles, which is great for sustainability, as well as our work with TAS Networks to leverage the arena grants. But I do just want to really draw the organisation and council's attention to the strategic priority to leverage the Hobart port to build on its reputation in industry and research capacity as a gateway to the Antarctic and Southern Ocean. I think this is a really key area that we need to work towards, especially in light of the state government's moves on Macquarie Point. To be able to really ensure that Regatta Point, the Cenotaph, Macquarie Point and the historically significant Hunter Island are draw cards for the local community, we need to make sure we're working even more closely with the state government and TAS Ports to make sure we can get the best outcome for the Antarctic Division and our Southern Ocean gateway status. So just wanted to draw the attention to that, which is only listed in the report, but just make sure that we are really pressing forward with that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Any further discussion?
Thank you,
Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a couple of broad comments. I think it's great to get an update like this. It would be fantastic if I went through the document, and my key questions related to things like next steps and timeframes information. So in future updates, if things are in progress, if we can have maybe the next step is, or council can expect to see this item, come to them roughly when, because that's my key queries related to those sort of things. I did want to, I know in there that the parking strategies turn into the transport strategy, and we had obviously the North Hobart situation and a petition from the community both over a year ago, I'd say. So I was hoping we might get a time frame around when the transport, when the transport strategy might be ready for consultation. Is that a known thing?
I'm not sure. Director Cooper, would you like to respond to that question?
Through you, Lord Mayor, the transport strategy will be due for consultation towards the last quarter of this year.
Thank you. There was also I didn't see reference to the Sandy Bay structure plan. Would that come on a future document? Yeah.
Backwards looking document.
Backwards, yeah, okay. So, one other small thing, but there was a few acronyms in there which are probably unfamiliar to some of us new people, so I was wondering, for example, what the FAIR panel was, F-A-I-R. I've tried to figure it out myself, but that was one I couldn't get. So maybe just, if anyone happens to know, Mark, you might know.
FAIR panel?
It was related to procurement from memory. That's okay.
But maybe we can take on... Mr. Noy?
It's my understanding that it relates to asset management panel that looks at asset valuations and the like.
Thank you. So maybe just, that sort of thing. There was, as Councillor Baselt spoke about the accessible footpaths, that was another one that I was hoping we might get a rough time frame on when that audit might be finished, because especially with the correlation with scooters, do we have a time frame around when the accessible footpath audit might be complete in action?
No, we don't, but we can take that on notice and provide you with that information.
Thank you. That's great. That's it. Thanks.
Councillor Dutt has got his hand up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a clarification on page 23 in the last column, and it reads, "As Feed Lab MOU for settlement on market has been claimed, and the enterprise lease has been renewed." What is this? Could you clarify it, please?
Director Cooper.
Thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Dutta, the Seed Lab MOU Seed Lab is an incubator that is funded by the state government to support early stage businesses that are producing food and home items. We've signed a memorandum of understanding with them to provide support both to their participants and to our market stallholders in growing their business. The second one is the Enterprise Innovation Hub that currently leases the 5th floor of the Council Business Centre. We've continued our support for that environment, so that incubator, for a further 5 years. So it's just noting that we're contributing to support for both small and start-up businesses, essentially.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put that item. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Baracus, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Baselt, Councillor Loberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko. It's carried, Lord Mayor. 11 votes to 1.
Item 11, a submission on the Tasmanian Government's Population Strategy Refresh consultation paper. Would someone like to move this recommendation?
The item for discussion.
Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Is there any discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Look, I note the recommendation from officers here to endorse the attachment, the attached letter. I think for me this is a really important issue. Population growth is something that is arguably the largest issue facing the state and the city of Hobart. And I feel that there are quite a number of issues that we could have included within the report to help guide the state government's hands when it comes to managing population growth in the coming years and decades. And so for that reason I can't support the recommendation to send the letter as is, and instead I would move an amendment which I'm happy to share with elected members, and I will do that now, but I can read it out if that is of use to people as well.
That would be good, and then send it
Certainly. So, the Council enabled the Director of Intergovernmental Relations and Partnerships to draft a new submission to the Tasmanian Government's Population Strategy, Refresh, that includes more in-depth commentary on the following: congestion, public transport and active transport, provision of healthcare and emergency services, provision of education including schools, university and early childhood, and pressures on the local government sector that can be ameliorated by changes to legislation, particularly as it relates to land use and development, such as developer contributions, windfall gains tax and inclusionary zoning.
So if that'll come through to the officers, we might need to get you to read it out again. Councillor Posselt, I'm just wondering, because of the way you opened that, it sounds like it's an alternative motion, whereas if you just said that you just add
amend the motion as it stands to read as I read it. Include.
No, I think if you're going to, you'd have to. I think your amendment starts by saying that there's a whole new submission drafted, so that would be a foreshadowed motion. Whereas I think if you want to just ask for those items to be added to the draft submission, that would be okay as an amendment.
To amend the submission?
Yeah, so rather than creating a whole new submission, because that would be contrary to the motion in front of us.
Coming to everyone now.
Do you want to just read that for us with that?
Yep, certainly. So the Council, the amendment reads as follows. The Council enabled the Director of Intergovernmental Relations and Partnerships to draft, to amend, sorry, it's just gone into a different window. Forgive me.
To amend the submission.
The Council enabled the Director of Intergovernmental Relations and Partnerships to amend the submission to the Tasmanian Government's Population Strategy Refresh that includes more in-depth commentary on the matters that I read before.
Okay. I think that's clear, but we'll still get that sent in. Is there a seconder for your motion? Alderman Bloomfield. Okay.
If I can just speak to it very briefly. The reason I feel so strongly about this is that I think that, as I said, population growth is one of the biggest things that are facing the city moving forward, and planning for that is really important. And when we submit documents to the state government at their request, I think that we should be diligent in making sure we cover the issues that affect our sector and our city. And I would like to see it that our submissions are of a quality that they are at the top of the pile and the state government come to the pile of submissions made and say, this is the City of Hobart's one, this is the most important one in this pile. And that's why I'd like to see a more in-depth version of what we've done.
So comments on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? Alderman, Councillor Harvey.
First, what's the deadline for our submission through you to make it direct?
Through you. Yeah, there was a 4-week window to submit this submission, which is why it was a fairly brief and consolidated submission. But we will, through this motion, ask for an extension to that through the state government.
Further discussion on the amendment? Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'm in favour of this in principle. I think, as Councillor Basalt said, increasing population is probably one of the bigger issues that we're facing, to the point where many of the issues that we have at the moment are symptoms of an increasing population. We've got increasing congestion, we've also got increasing housing stresses, and a large part of that is to contrast with 2013 when we had negative population growth. We had a whole different range of issues, but now the issues that we're having are from high levels of demand on our infrastructure and our housing market. There's more people here, and every year there's more and more again. And I think it's important that as a council we do our part, and we really work with state governments and work with federal governments to find those long-term solutions to make sure that we are meeting the demands of a growing population and a growing city. I, like Councillor Basalt, I think it's very necessary to touch on the issue of public transport, and how we will deal with that issue in the long term, because that also affects settlement patterns, it affects where housing is going to be, so it will affect issues outside of just how long does it take to drive to work in the morning or how often is the bus. I did note though, however, and there's one issue I've got concern with the amendment. The document that we've got in front of us, and correct me if I'm anyone's happy to correct me, is very, not vague, but very high level in so much as it's speaking to the issues and not speaking towards any individual policies or projects or initiatives. I'm largely comfortable with all the dot points that have been suggested by Councillor Basalt until we start getting down to suggesting different taxes and suggesting developer contributions, because I think they are issues that this council is going to have to make decisions on itself and will be necessarily of a political nature, especially with how we liaise with the state government on this. And I think it's, given the given the high level nature of the document itself, I think it's going into a level of specificity that I don't think would be helpful for the document. For that reason, I'm not really comfortable supporting the amendment, but I do support it in principle on all the other dot points. So I'm sort of in a bit of a quandary here.
Would I like to amend the examples out?
Yeah, I'm 100% supporting the factors.
I think we're getting
fair.
Negotiating across the table.
So I'll just wrap up then, Lord Mayor. If it wasn't for those specific examples on the bottom of the amendment, I'd be happy to support it.
We've still got your amendment in front of us, Councillor Posselt, but let me know if you do want to change it. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm just going to speak quickly on this. I'm really happy to support this amendment. I did think there were some weaknesses in that document and just glaring gaps. Obviously, population growth has downsides, and we do need to focus on how we're going to manage those as well. I'm really happy to support this. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Elliott?
Yes, along a similar sort of vein, I was wondering if we could also, perhaps Councillor Purcell might be happy to capture an amendment, but reference to why, for example, the council, we have engaged another consulting company, ID Consulting, to help us with populations information, and why, perhaps feeding back to the state government, the reasons why we felt that was necessary. Perhaps information, from them wasn't inadequate or unreliable, but I think they should know that bodies are having to go out and consult for their own data that should really be reliably coming from the state, I would have thought, the ABS.
Councillor Elliott, I think that can probably be factored in as a comment into the staff, because it's really just expanding what's here.
Okay, yep. And then the other one perhaps is recognising in our submission back to the state that we as the council recognise that there is disagreement in the community about how we should approach population growth, because there are some that feel that we don't want to grow, and there's others that feel we should be actively growing, and others that feel that we should be meeting demand growth that happens to us. So I think recognising in the community that there are different perspectives on population growth.
Take that on board. So the acting CEO is able to just accommodate those within the amendments.
That's good.
I think Councillor Posselt's a more sort of specific whole new section. So any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, so I'm just checking in. Are you happy to proceed with the amendment you've got? Okay. And you've got a copy of it?
I received it, haven't we?
Okay, you've received it. Good. Okay, I'll put the...
Before we vote, can I just confirm if I think there was some suggestion at the end would be that these examples would be removed?
I'll leave it in.
Okay.
All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
Aye.
Hands. All those in favour of the amendment. This is, sorry.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis and Councillor Elliott. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 9 votes to 3.
And so now the motion as amended, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
Aye.
And all those in favour?
Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis and Councillor Elliott. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 9 votes to 3.
Okay, moving on now to item 12, the Community Engagement Review Update. Would anyone like to speak to this or move the motion? Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, second by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion? Being no discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Oh, Alderman Zuko, did you want to say something?
Who wants something on this? Just a second. Sorry, just hold it for a second. Yeah.
I might just.
Fine with me. It's okay.
I might just ask a question. Can someone just as an exploratory question? Can somebody explain the concept of the inaugural First Nations procurement policy? What's the context for that? How would that work?
Next slide.
I'm on the wrong one. Sorry. Yeah. Apologies.
All right.
Yep. Sorry, I'll skip on.
All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Alderman Barakis, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Loberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against?
Okay, it's carried, Lord Mayor, 11 votes to 1.
Item 13 is the City of Hobart Procurement Strategy 23 to 27. Would anyone like to move this item? Moved by...
Actually, no, I won't move it. I might have an amendment.
Moved by Deputy, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Recommendations 1 to 5. Alderman Barakis.
Can I just ask the same question again? Thank you.
Item 4. Question around the point 4 for Director Reynolds.
It's around can someone explain the idea behind and how the First Nations procurement policy will work, just so I can get my head around it.
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. It's really an extension of our ethical buying policy, if you will, in regards to buy local, for example, and looking at other groups that may benefit from our buying power here at the council and extending those procurement opportunities to Indigenous organisations, for example.
Just a follow-up question. So is it more about then using councils' buying power to assist Indigenous groups? Is that what we're talking about, or buying from?
Director Reynolds.
Through you, Lord Mayor. When considering purchasing by the council, a factor may be in the case Indigenous, if it's an Indigenous organisation, looking at that as a potential option for purchase.
Okay. Apologies, I've got questions after questions here. Would that then suggest that, through you, that so like for like, if a local producer was offering a product and a local Indigenous producer was offering the same product, then the Indigenous producer would be favoured over the otherwise local producer?
Alderman Brooks, can I just hop in, because I think this is still to be developed. So all we're doing is agreeing that this will be developed, but it will come back to us. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Director Reynolds, just to make sure I've got this right, these policies will all come back to the council before they're approved. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I've got a couple of questions. One is with regard to Scope 3 emissions to be included in our procurement strategy somehow, so we just know whether or not our suppliers are responsive to their emissions, their climate emissions.
So that's probably in one of these to be confirmed policies. But Mr. Director Reynolds, do we have anything about that at the moment, or that's to be developed in that policy?
Thank you, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, this will be part of the City's sustainable procurement policy, developed and brought back to the Chamber for approval and consideration.
Okay, thank you. So Scope 3 I think is important to understand within procurement. And the second part is capacity to repair and maintain our, say, for example, vehicles that are under contracts or lease arrangements. Are we able to do our own maintenance? Are we able to repair things, or do they have to go back through a process which is potentially more expensive than having our own officers do something? So how does that get included into the procurement strategy? And also, rather than buy stuff, can we make stuff? Are we able to have our internal fabrication do things instead of purchasing?
I think, Councillor Harvey, there'd all be things that would be in the policy that would come back to us.
Yeah.
But I think they've been noted
Yeah, no,
by
I
the
get
officers.
that. I'm just raising it to make sure that we can address those things, because there might be opportunities to repair things rather than replace things, or to do internal maintenance rather than have to send it out for maintenance.
Alderman Zuko, were you getting up? Or?
Yeah, Lord Mayor, just a question. You just actually to you. You just mentioned that we're not approving this. This is going to come back. Is that correct?
That's what it says here.
Yeah, I know that, Lord Mayor. But if that's the case, it actually concerns me that the Hobart City procurement strategy be approved and subject to final design be made available to the city's website. Surely, if it's going to come back to us, it should be endorsed and subject to final design. So I'd like to move an amendment that those wordings are changed in part 2, that the word approved be changed to endorsed, the word and be removed, and subject to final design, and come back to council before being implemented on the council's website. Because the way it's reading, Lord Mayor, we're approving it to go on the council's website. That's the way I'm taking it. So I move that as an amendment if it's got to come back to us for approval.
Quickly run through those once again. So it's the word approved to endorse.
To endorse. Remove the word and. Subject to final design. Subject to final design and back to council prior to its availability to the city's website.
Clarification from the officer around what we're actually seeking to approve today, because it seems like we're approving the strategy.
Yeah, sorry, of course. Yeah, please. Would you like to know?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, this is the procurement strategy, which is the proposed direction for the city in respect to procurement. It builds upon the earlier strategy that the council approved for 2018 to 22. So this is a revised and updated strategy, and everything in it is proposed to be undertaken over come back to the Chamber for approval. But what's in front of you is the proposed strategy that we would undertake over the next 5 years.
So Alderman Zuko, does that clarify for you?
No, and I'll explain to you why. If something's going to go on the city's website, I want to approve it prior to
the document here.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right, I'll just vote against it. I'm not going to argue.
Okay,
so just to clarify, part 4, I think, is important for me. A communication strategy be developed to highlight relevant parts of the strategy when implemented, including but not limited to the development of the city's inaugural First Nations procurement policy, city sustainable procurement policy. So that clarifies it that these are ongoing and will be developed as we go. But the strategy needs to be there so we can have a procurement strategy going forward, I think.
So Alderman Zuko, did you still want me to put that amendment?
I'll withdraw it. I'm not going to sit in an argument. I'm not going to get anywhere.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion?
Just to clarify, just in light of the conversation here, the document that we're approving is the strategy document which we have in front of us in the agenda that we should have read. So there's nothing that we need to further approve for the website, as we've been given all the information that will be on the website. Is that correct?
What you see in front of you will be posted on the website.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I was reading through the strategy document. I would like to have seen, if it is possible to see, more information around the sole provider dependency issue, where we have only one provider for items, and what we're doing with that intelligence and making sure that we're tackling that, we're capturing the intelligence somehow and feeding it from some central point so that we can obviously not be caught out with, being held for ransom on our costs.
It's been noted by the staff. All right, no further discussion. I'm going to put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Barakis, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 11 votes to 1.
Okay, so now we have item 14, the Public Interest Register and Conflicts of Interest Advisory Panel. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, is that right?
No, isn't it the motion spot? Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, so, that it be received and noted. Oh, sorry.
The recommendation, you're moving the recommendation. Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Discussion on the matter. Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I can't support this, and in particular for part 2. The Chief Executive Officer be authorised to develop the principles into a formal policy of the Council. Now, to me, I've always seen the policy first, and if we go to item, just one second, it's further on, where we are going to approve a policy tonight. The policy is there for us to approve. I think it's item 16, I've corrected. Just a second. Yeah, the draft policy, City of Hobart flag policy. The policy is here for us to approve. To me, I've got no issues with delegating the CEO to matters, but these are draft principles that are going to be turned into a policy, and until such time I see the draft policy, I can't support this. So, as far as I'm concerned, Lord Mayor, I'd like to see the draft policy come back to the Council first, as with Part 16. Policy's there for us to see and read. Right, so I move an amendment that the policy once developed, change Part 2 to the policy once developed comes back to Council for final approval. So I move that as an amendment, Lord Mayor.
So is it the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to develop the policy and bring it back to Council?
Yep, use those words, that's fine, Lord Mayor.
So I need a second for that motion.
Happy to second.
Sorry, seconded by Councillor Dutta.
No, he's asking a question, I think.
I'm happy to second.
I have the same issue and it's been put up by Alderman Zuko and I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Dutta. Any discussion on the amendment? We'll start on the amendment, I think.
Oh, look, I was just to speak on the amendment. Look, I've had similar views on this and probably on the next item as well. Just as a general rule, I think it's important that we have, even if we delegate to our staff to formulate these policies, I think it's important that on major policies like this, that we are the ones that have the final approval and final say, because ultimately we're the ones that get held accountable to these policies, and even when it's not policies directed at us, policies that go broadly, at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, it's on our heads, and I think it's important that we are the ones that ultimately provide that scrutiny and make sure that what's being put out now in our names and the council's names is appropriate. So look, I'd be definitely supporting this as a matter of principle, but I'd suggest similar across the board.
Further discussion on the amendment?
Sorry, can I just clarify this? So the recommendation, Council resolved to establish a public interest register policy, including the principles outlined in this report. Yeah, fine. The Chief Executive Officer be authorised to develop the principles into a formal policy of the Council to be then signed off by the Council. So that's the additional bit you're looking for?
No, because then it immediately says policy provisions commence from 30th of April, so it's not coming back to Council.
It could on our April meeting.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with Part 3. Part 2, then come back to Council for ratification. Yep, all right. No, it's resolved to create it, then the second part.
Okay, further discussion on the amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Have you got the wording of that? Yes. All right. So I'll put the... Councillor...
Just very briefly, all I would ask is that we, given the way the amendment is phrased and the issue that you've brought up, which is completely valid, that we vote on the 4 parts separately.
Only 3 parts.
3 parts. Am I looking at the right thing?
Yes, you are. 3 parts. I was looking at the next one because it's going to be the same problem. So 3 parts separately.
I'm not sure why we'd need to do that. I think it just is one step back to our April meeting. So it could still commence on the 30th of April, I think. Okay, so I'm going to put the I'll put the amendment first. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Any further discussion on the substantive item? Given you will now have another look at the final policy on the April meeting.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, both this item and the next item, I think when this came up last year, I said it was a solution in search of a problem in many regards. But that said, I did have some concerns about this one. I'm much more comfortable with this item than I am with the next one. And ultimately, I think having it come back to us before we give a final endorsement makes me a bit more comfortable again. Because there were some elements that are somewhat answered as far as what the thresholds are and what is something that's reportable versus something that's not reportable. But look, I'm happy to let this come back and see what comes back in a formal policy. But we'll have to see how it goes. I think it is definitely important that both this and the next item. The intent of these is to provide, not to speak on behalf of anybody else, but the intent of these items is to provide transparency for us as decision makers to the public. And I think it's very, very important that it not get turned into something that gets used as a stick by people that might disagree with certain elected members on issues looking for something to get you with. And there's a difference between mechanisms to ensure accountability and integrity, which are very important, and opportunities for sort of vexatious gotcha moments. Because I think we have enough of them to deal with as elected members as it is. So look, I'll let the debate carry on this one, but I just think it's important to make that point.
Discussion. I'll put Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I just have a few questions or want to understand a bit more about some of the principles. Obviously, completely on board with the intent around conflicts of interest being the objective here. We've got here around land elected member owns within municipality area of Hobart, excluding primary residents. That makes complete sense. And then also, but I'm not sure why some of the other principles have been formed up. So, for example, with the shares one, how did we come at the figure of 10k in value, and at what point in time is that? Because obviously shares fluctuate. And also, why would shares that have absolutely nothing to do with Hobart be of relevance? So that's my first question to the relevant person.
I'd like to respond to that.
Look, the principles that we have here are based on examples from other jurisdictions and what they've employed and used as far as developing their policy. So we've drawn upon that.
So we don't have the council or the officers haven't formed their own view on the appropriateness of it being 10,000. Why was it 10,000? Why not 5,000? And why have we applied a region barrier around land and we haven't applied the same barrier around shares or personal debt? It seems a bit. I like consistency in the logic that's applied.
Well, I think it's based on other capital city registers of interests.
It's not solid enough logic for me personally. But so anyway, I'll continue on. So my concerns with it are, like I said, that for land we have it contained to Hobart, and that makes sense. For shares, I think it should also be contained to whatever could possibly impact on Hobart. Perhaps you have shares in a local business, for example. Otherwise, shares in a company that has nothing to do with Hobart really has zero relevance. Personal debt as well. Again, I was keen to understand why 10,000 is the magic figure there. Why not 5,000? How did we arrange it? How did we arrive at that? And also, just thinking about practicalising, bringing this policy to life. Let's just say I owe $11,000 to my auntie that lives in Berrydale. Why would I have to declare that? I don't understand the logic behind the principles of it. So I was just hoping for a deeper understanding of how these principles have been arrived at. So, for example, I would like to see their principles amended so that they read like the one that applies to land, because that one makes sense to me. That it should be interests that are relevant to Hobart, not just interests in general. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I agree with Councillor Elliott there, but with all she said, and Alderman Zuko, Barakis, but I think that with the way Hobart's working together with other municipalities and all that, I really can't see why the land issue has to be isolated to Hobart. I mean, there's a lot of developers and developments that cross boundaries very, very easily, and you know, I just cannot see the logic in that, and so I'd be really pushing to see that that it isn't just restricted to the municipality of Hobart. I will say for the record too, I find this, as I've said before, if this had been on the table, this whole thing, I would have, you know, thought twice about being standing for election. And I believe that the measures that we have in place at the moment are more than adequate to keeping us in line with the whole issue. I'm very private about what I have and don't have, and you know, if this is such a monumental thing like this, I believe it's appropriate to leave to a new term and not 3 months in roll in such a major issue. It might not affect some people, but it does affect me on a very personal level, and I think it's disgracefully unfair and all that. And I will say too, so what other councils or area jurisdictions do, we're big enough and got the resources here, I believe, and intelligence to make it a more nuanced type of document if that was to proceed. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
I have a question first, Lord Mayor, in regards to the comment by the Director in regards to other jurisdictions. Is this in line with our state politicians? Well, one under a state parliament.
I'd have to double check on that, Lord Mayor, because the principles aren't consistent.
And I'll say this, I really don't care what the City of Darwin does, or the City of Melbourne, or the City of Sydney, or any other jurisdiction outside of our state. To my point of view, we are legislated by the state government and our state politicians. They put legislation through, so we are a council, and councils across the state. If we're going to implement something like this, I believe we should be directly in line with what the state government is doing. So I'm going to move that this is deferred until such time we receive information in regards to what the state government policy is, or the state parliamentarians' policy is, and we develop something in line with state parliamentarians. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that govern us, and we should be in line with who we are governed by, not by someone in New South Wales or Victoria or that. So I move that as a procedural motion, Lord Mayor.
Before I accept that procedural motion, I'll just note that the report does say that this approach would be consistent with the approach at the state government level.
Lord Mayor, I haven't got that information in front of me to make a decision, and I'd like that information in front of me so we are in line with the state government. That's all I want. I don't think it's too much to ask.
Okay, so that's a procedural motion. I'd need a seconder for that. Alderman Barakis, so that's to defer the matter. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
And against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Pselt, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor. That's lost, Lord Mayor.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I'll continue my discussion, Lord Mayor. I just want to make some points here in regards to this matter, Lord Mayor, and that was raised by a few other elected members. In regards to why are we sort of stating amounts of personal debt of $10,000? Is that to target those people who may be a little bit more wealthier than others? To my point of view, who knows what debts we all have around this table? And as far as I'm concerned, why should it be a figure of $10,000? I think a figure of $1,000 should be the amount that should be put on there, so it stems across the board. Because to my point of view, this actually would target possibly the more wealthier elected members around the table. And we talk about paid employment over $10,000. Well, I think that's going to target just about every person around this table. Lord Mayor, so I'd like to have that amended, the personal debt to over $1,000. And I'm in agreement to shareholdings in public and private companies. What has it got to do if an elected member's got a shareholding in some company in Italy? I'm only throwing that in because I'm Italian, Lord Mayor, and I haven't got the shares in the company in Italy. I'll just let you know that. But I think I believe it should be in any company that the Hobart City Council is dealing with. That's where it's got to be down that line. Not companies that we're not dealing with. I think that means that the list could go that long for those people that do have a lot of shares and shareholdings. Do we go into also? Do we have to go into our super funds and look at who is investing on our behalf in the super funds?
I don't think that's included.
I know that, but Lord Mayor, but I'm just giving you some thoughts there. If my investor is investing on my behalf, I've got a self-managed fund and I've got someone who does my work using my super fund and investing my super fund in my super fund in the company shares. Lord Mayor, I think you've got to be. That's got to be given more thought as well. I've got no issue with this. I've got no issue with this. But I do feel for Councillor Kelly. He's again. There might have been other people that stood that if they had known that something like this was coming forward, may have reconsidered their position and situation. To be honest with you, and to be totally honest with you, I still believe that this should be something that should be looked at by changes to the Local Government Act. And I think that's where we should be pushing it, so that way there it's consistent across the whole of the LGAT. Not Hobart have X and Clarence have Y and Glenorchy have something else. No wonder there's this push for amalgamations, because we've got 29 councils across the state. I don't think that's where we should be pushing this. We should be pushing it to the LGAT to lobby on behalf of the Hobart City Council to lobby the state government and even maybe the upper house. Look, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to vote against this, Lord Mayor, unless I see changes or a better document. I know it's coming back for the final policy, and I'll make some more points when the policy is there. But I think you need to have more thought to this. I think we're just rushing it because you think that it's going to trip up potentially people like myself. Well, it's not. I don't care. I'm an open book. What my investments are, they're going to be there. I don't even trade with people that I'm in business with. Anyway, up to you guys.
Okay. So we've got an amendment, though. Alderman Zuko, do you want me to put that?
Yes, please.
I need a second for Alderman Zuko's amendment, which is
down to $1,000.
Personal debt from 10,000 to 1,000. Okay, so that's been seconded by Councillor Sherlock, was it? No. Oh, Alderman Brackett, sorry. So I'll just put that amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Baracus, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly, Deputy Lord Mayor.
And against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Layberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Lord Mayor. That's lost, Lord Mayor. 5 votes to 7.
Okay, so we're going back to the original motion.
or two questions. Through you, Lord Mayor, I've got two questions. First one is noting Part J under interests, where it says any election campaign donation, and just obviously noting the rest of that interest section. Would this effectively replace or render redundant the council's gift register?
Director Reynolds.
Regular way. No, the gift register would remain relevant.
Fair enough. Just noting because I can't comment. The other question, given that there's been a large number of technical questions on this, and I think rightfully so, was there a workshop on this that I might have missed? And if not, is this something that should have gone to a workshop given the complexities of the item?
I guess no, there wasn't a workshop, but
is there a reason why there wasn't a workshop? Given that we have a lot of workshops on many different things, is there a reason why a workshop wasn't deemed to be necessary for this?
An answer to that. But has anyone got an answer to that? No, sorry. No answer to that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment? On the motion, which has been amended by Alderman Zuko to have it coming back to council before it becomes policy. Alderman Bloomfield.
In general, I actually do agree, because why have more than one policy when we have so many different types of governance out there? A single one that everyone can trust and rely on would be great. But I will point out some other elements that we probably should kind of keep in mind here. It's easy to say, hey, I'm buying some international or national shares. What relevance do they have? Well, there are instances where national and international companies do invest in Hobart. For instance, imagine if you had shares in Beam or Neuron and they invested in Hobart along with a whole lot of other things. Would you be in? Imagine if, for instance, I don't know, but they're already here, but say you had some NAB shares and they were going to build some enormous building in the centre of Hobart, and you thought, geez, that would be great. That's going to impact my shareholding. There are things like that which sound kind of crazy until you realise that these things genuinely can and do happen. Not commonly, but they do and can. The other element here, which I thought was interesting too, was value of shares. I suppose I do more work in this area than most here, but what I would suggest with the shares is that there would be obviously a policy installed with that, where the price or average price would be examined on an agreed term and time, that if the shares over time had either increased or decreased to a certain value, which has been itemised at $10,000, that would imply that you would have influence, that you would be looking at thinking twice about making a decision, because $10,000 is considered to be a significant sum in our world. So these are some of the reasons. The other reason why alternative investments outside Hobart have relevance is that council here, we actually on occasion do speak to both state and federal policy. So if you have a lot of rental properties, but not one is in Hobart, and yet there is a rental policy federal policy consideration or change that we're going to put a submission in, that's actually now material. So I think we have to be a little bit more considerate and think broader, because it's not all about what's in our little bird. It's actually far more holistic, and it's far more encompassing in that we simply want to have good governance and we simply want to have good decisions. But having said all of this, in fact, I do feel genuinely that we should be looking at a very similar, if not the same, as state and federal possibly governance with these types of things to keep things in.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion as amended by Alderman Zuko about bringing the final policy back to council for our next meeting. All those in favour say aye. Say no. Carried unanimously. Okie doke. Item 15, which is also in response to a notice of motion and the property developer contact register. We have a recommendation that has 4 items, and I'd need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. I think Alderman Zuko might have been up first.
Lord Mayor, in similar light to the previous motion, I move an amendment that the policy comes back to council for final approval, changing part 2. Again, if you want me to put the argument, Lord Mayor, and in item 16 we have the draft policy there for approval. I think that in similar light to the other, we need to see the final draft policy before it is approved, and that's the amendment I'm putting forward.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock.
Second on everything you do.
Okay. Who was the original mover? Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Okay, so you're seconding Councillor Harvey. Okay, I'm going to just see if anyone would like to speak to that amendment. There's nobody, so I'll put that so that we've got that as amended. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, so we've now got the motion as amended. Any further discussion?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Look, I've got concerns with this, and my concerns are, and I'll deal with it when the policy comes, and I'm just going to flag it now. Lord Mayor, I've got no problem in having a register in the sense of when we're dealing with development applications on discussions in regards to those developments, but I do have a concern when we're only targeting one side of the coin. From my point of view, that's discrimination, Lord Mayor, because there are a number of different lobby groups, but they're not going to be considered as lobbyists because they might be community-based lobby groups, but they're not all community-based lobby groups, Lord Mayor. There are some that are quite clearly registered. And the question also can be asked about whether or not we have any meetings with the Chancellor of the University, Lord Mayor. Does that mean that we can't even speak to the Chancellor of the University in regards to university matters when there's constant applications coming forward to this council? I can continually go on and give you examples, Lord Mayor. As I'm saying, and I'll repeat, this is discrimination. We're discriminating against one side of the argument, not all sides of the argument. I have no problem in this council having a policy in regards to when developers come forward with a development application, that we go down the track of that register, and I've got no problem in actually organising Mr. Noy and giving him some more work to do every time I do so, because I'll keep him very, very busy in doing so. So, it's going to be more work for our esteemed Director of Planning, which no doubt he'll ensure that any meetings in regards to developers, he's my number one choice. But I do also have a concern, Lord Mayor, with 4.6. There is currently no legislative or policy requirement for elected members to declare a contact and communication that it had with property developers. However, there is a requirement should the contact have been a pecuniary or non-pecuniary conflict of interest. So basically, it's covered by the Act. Right? So in reading some of these reports today, we talk about going down the track of the cost. There's a couple of motions coming down. The costs associated with staff having to deal with these reports. We're covered under legislation. We are currently covered under legislation, and all we are doing here is throwing into the mix that all property developers are bad. But It's okay to have the lobbyists come to us. I won't mention any of those, the names of all of them, but we know who they are. And there's a number of elected members around this table who have had meetings constantly with those lobbyists. Also the Grand Chancellor have had meetings with in regards to development. Vice Chancellor, sorry, yeah, I looked it up. I really sort of... This is beyond ridiculous and ludicrous. So we are going to be a council that is governed by legislation, and there's no requirement under the legislation to have anything like this because we're already governed. But yet we can complain about the costs associated with doing reports in later items, and the costs associated with having to deal with this going down the track when we're governed by legislation, and the extra work I'm going to be imposing on our director and on our CEO, because I'm going to have them both at my meetings every time any person comes to me. So I'll make sure that they're there, and it's going to cost this council quite a considerable amount of money. I just want to remind each and every elected member, we are governed by the Local Government Act. And the Local Government Act is the one fundamental thing that we have to abide by. This is a policy. Do we have to abide by a policy that this council, if it could be deemed indifferent to the legislation? Think about that as well. I won't be supporting this. It needs to come back, so I'll have another go another time.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. I think Alderman Zuko has got a point, because often it's not the developer that contacts you, it's their lobbyist that contacts you. So I'd be happy to include property developers and lobbyists. So in the point 1, the council resolved to establish a property developer and a lobbyist. Lobbyists plural, I think. Yep. Contact register. So if that could be included, I don't know if there needs to be an amendment. Should we just include it?
I'm going to amend it.
Okay, I'll move that as an amendment because I just feel I've had more contact with lobbyists than I have had with developers. The developer, or does this imply that a developer's representative is separate to a lobbyist? Or, what does it include? What's a property developer contact? Does that include the lobbyist? A lobbyist. But then there's other lobbyists that are arguing on the other side if they're an organised. So anyway, I'm happy to move that as an amendment if I haven't talked myself out of it.
Quickly ask a question.
A response from the Manager of Legal and Governance to that query. Is it already included?
Through you, Lord Mayor, if you look in paragraph, starts at paragraph 6.5, the definition of a developer, part A is talking about the developer themselves, but then part B includes any consultant, lobbyist, advisor, agent, so on and so forth, that might be associated with that developer.
That's to do with the development side, but from the other side, if someone's opposing something, it's not included?
That's correct.
So I think maybe we should have both sides.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I just really wanted to ask a question. It was kind of in line of what Alderman Harvey's saying. Would we be better saying registered lobbyists, because that actually allows us to identify more clearly, and it also does in fact say both sides, not just the developer but also other groups that registered? Would that be an appropriate word?
Are you happy to put in registered lobbyists, Alderman Harvey?
Because how do you register? Like the state government has a register.
What are you
of
trying to
lobbyists.
achieve?
I'm trying to achieve a bit of equality, and that lobbyists are not necessarily developers.
But is that what the purpose of the anyway?
Well, I think it's important because you get people arguing the case either way, and you get people arguing the case for something who are not part of the development, who are not associated with the developers, but they're lobbying you through a organised process.
And they're going to have a private gain if they meet with the elected members?
Well, they're still lobbying you to get an outcome. For example, maybe the Salamanca Market Stallholders Association should have registered themselves if they're running a campaign against the council.
Okay. All right.
Lobbyists?
So we've got Alderman Harvey's suggestion to add "and lobbyists," and that needs to be seconded by somebody to put it forward. Seconded by Alderman Barakis. Would anyone like to speak on the amendment? I'm just trying to keep this a clean debate, so I'm going to just focus on the amendment now. Alderman Harvey's amendment. Councillor Posselt.
Thank you. So just on the amendment, I mean, I think it's really important to point out, like there is obviously in any development there is the side that wants it and the side that doesn't want it. Typically, the side that wants the development to go ahead has a fairly significant pecuniary interest in that development, while others have more social framework, generally speaking. Yes, there are at times places that might be devalued by the development next door that may employ a lobbyist on their behalf. However, like a good example is the development that was a development that came before council next to a major private school that received 600 and something submissions and representations. Is the school a lobbyist group? No, it's a public institution that has an opinion. And so I think it just gets into really sketchy territory of defining who is a lobbyist group on that side, whereas there's a clear definition that's been used in other jurisdictions for lobbyists that work for property developers, and this register is based in and solidly founded in the registers that exist elsewhere in the country that aim to serve the same outcome.
Alderman Barakis. It's on the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment. Look, and I think Councillor Posselt largely touched on it, but we might be coming at it from different perspectives. Plenty of times I've been contacted by people saying, don't you vote for this development because it's going to affect my property next door, it's going to make my property worth so much less, or people down the street have said it's going to make my property worth so much less. But then again, on the other side, we've had, and perhaps the wording might be lobbyists or other organisations, because and I might just suggest in conversation that it's say lobbyists and organisations, because it does also then define what prescribed contact is, and the prescribed contact is in regards to a development application. So if it was to say organisation, then it would be an organisation contacting you in regards to a prescribed contact, which means contact related to a planning or development application. Because those on council that are new wouldn't have seen this, but those that were here before, when we had items like the cable car, and I know we don't talk about the war, Lord Mayor, but or other large developments, including the hospital, including the Welcome Stranger, including many others, including that one that was mentioned on next to the school, we get inundated by contacts, and that's fine, that's easily registerable. But there were plenty of times where a certain organisation, and I'd call them a lobby group, has contacted, gone on the record publicly, has reached out privately to elected members, and sent around emails saying, just remember who supported you in the last election, and just remember that you have to do the right thing now and repay that. And I think if that's not trying to influence elected members, and people can make their own assessment as whether or not that's appropriate. But the real question here, I get Councillor Posselt's reasoning about the difference here being that one person makes a direct pecuniary benefit. The issue isn't whether or not another individual makes a pecuniary benefit. That can be argued either way. The issue is whether there's a risk of an individual improperly influencing us as elected members. That's ultimately what the real issue is. If somebody makes a buck, that doesn't matter as long as we're conducting ourselves properly. That's ultimately the reasoning behind all of this. But just like an organisation set up to oppose a particular development for whatever reason has the same capacity to lean on or improperly influence elected members the same way a developer or somebody representing a developer could. So look, in the interest of bipartisanship, I actually agree with what Councillor Harvey is saying. So I seconded the motion. I would suggest perhaps something a bit vaguer as far as lobbyist or organisation. I think we do need to remove that direct link that it's only including people that represent the developer, because I've been pressured by people to sit on the other side sometimes to the point where I felt uncomfortable, and sometimes by developers as well. Like this is something that cuts both ways, and I think it's important that this contact register cut both ways if we are to be taking it seriously, because what this would suggest otherwise is that without amendment, you have one particular group of people that are having their ability to engage with elected members restricted or chilled, and the other side not. And look, I've seen behaviour on both sides of this, so I think in the interest of fairness, and also in the interest of actually achieving what this item is attempting to achieve, I think it's crucially important that it does cut both ways.
On the amendment, Alderman Harvey's amendment.
Look, I'm just reading through the definitions here of a developer, which I did pass over too quickly. And my intent is not to have to register any individual that is speaking against something. The intention is any body corporate, whatever, that might be opposing something as well. An organised campaign, not individuals. But then even an organised campaign is really challenging as well. So I'm just considering whether or not I withdraw my amendment to make it more simple. Yes, I think I will withdraw.
Can I then move a similar amendment, but perhaps differently worded, to also include organisation?
Okay. Oh, so you want
rather than lobbyists on the other side to include organisation.
A property developer and organisation contact register policy.
Well, I'd still call it. It should be called a developer and lobbyist contact. But I'm just talking about we're including perhaps include the prescribed contact to also include organisations that may be representing either side of a development application.
So, Alderman Brooks, just so I'm really clear, which item is it? Is it in 1, 2, 3, or 4? The amendment you're proposing.
It would be towards. Well, I'm actually going to a high level. We're going down into the actual policy, but perhaps actually add a part 5 that the definitions of developer and lobbyist be amended to include organisations representing either side of the debate. Because obviously, same as the previous item, we've voted on the amendment. This will come back for final approval. So we'll consider what the drafting of that looks like. But I think it is critical that we capture both sides of this.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Sherlock. This amendment now in front of us. Councillor Sherlock. We've got a new amendment, which is a new item 5. Would anyone like to... The definition of developer and lobbyist be amended to include organisations on the other side?
Organisations that may represent either side of the development application.
Okay, any discussion on this amendment?
To say, Lord Mayor, that I won't be supporting that amendment. I think this is it flies in the face of the intent of the motion, which and I think the research that's gone into developing this recommendation is quite clear. So I'm going to stick to what we have before us.
Councillor Elliott on the amendment.
Yes, I think it's very important that we capture both sides of especially planning applications. We can get equal pressure from both sides, before the applicant and also people that don't want the application, and they could be equally as convincing and pressing and pose an equal amount of risk to improper decision making. And I think there's a fine line the policy will have to take in terms of what's realistic. I mean, if someone comes to you and they talk about they've got an intention to lodge an application, or is it only when they actually have lodged an application? And then the same on the other side of the coin, having what's a organisation or what's an orchestrated campaign against. So I think in the policy definitions it have to be really carefully spelt out. And also I had a question around the privacy impact of things. So if someone is approaching you, however they do so, and they aren't aware that their details are going to be recorded and publicly available, at what point in time are we going to let them know that because you've spoken to me about your application, the council will now be publishing your details on the internet. So that's something we'll have to factor in. I did know there was a communication strategy around it, but just going back, I think it's critically important that both sides, both the for and the against, are captured in the recording. Thank you.
Just speaking to the amendment,
yes.
I just want to read this, Lord Mayor. Lobbying, which is usually involves direct face-to-face contact and cooperation with support staff that may not meet directly face-to-face, is done by many types of people, associations, organisations, groups, including individuals on a personal level in their capacity as a private citizen. And I can keep on reading on. That's what a lobbyist is, not what is defined in our report.
Now, discussion on the amendment.
Maybe what I read could be from Italy.
Further discussion on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is not a lobbyist register. This is a property developer contact register. It has nothing to do with lobbyists, other than those who are specifically linked to property development. This register is again founded in councils that have employed it elsewhere because of perceived problems and actual problems of corruption that have developed in other jurisdictions, specifically relating to property developers. In fact, New South Wales at the state level have banned property developers and real estate agents from seeking any form of public office, because that's how seriously they take the instances that have occurred in their state relating to corruption and property developers and real estate agents. I'm not saying that anything like that has occurred in our jurisdiction of Hobart or in the state of Tasmania. However, precedence in other Australian jurisdictions is a reasonable rationale for formulating protective policies for the council and for the city's reputation, and that's what this seeks to do. Transparency is universal. Transparency does not change via jurisdiction. It doesn't matter if you're Launceston or Hobart. Transparency is still transparency, and this register seeks to mitigate any perceived or actual conflicts of interest or corruption that is stable that may result as a result of contact with property developers or ongoing relationships with property developers. So we're still debating the amendment, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. That's fine.
Okay. So any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. I will have difficulty supporting that, but having read the report, and as Councillor Salt has said, I take a similar view. It is very clear the agenda item in front of me is that it's a property developer contact register, and we are now going and talking about other things which is not really relevant, and hence, I don't want to waste time, but simply say, having read the report and the definition and how it relates to this item, I would support this. Thank you. And not the amendment.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
And against?
Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor. As tied, Lord Mayor 6 votes to all. So the motion is lost. The amendment's lost, sorry.
Okay, so we're moving back to the motion as it stands, which is 1 to 4. Would anyone like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, look, I think we, as Councillor Purcell said, transparency is universal, and unfortunately the amendment didn't get up because our ability to be unduly influenced is also universal and can come from a number of different ways. And my fear is this is as Alderman Zuko said, an inherently discriminatory motion, given that we can be unduly influenced by people from all sides of a debate. Especially, as has been said, on development applications where there is a pecuniary interest to be made on both sides, and there is a large opportunity for people to attempt to unduly influence us. I do think it's inherently unfair that we're effectively placing a chilling effect on one group of people from engaging with elected members. I do have some questions. How would this be enforced exactly through you, Lord Mayor? And just as a supplementary, I'll ask it all at once. Say an elected member either not so much failed to declare a contact. What would be the enforcement action that would be taken on them?
I think that could be answered by Director Reynolds.
Thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor. The enforcement would be advised to the Director of Local Government.
Okay.
What was that?
Follow by policy.
There would be advice to the Director of Local Government.
So it would then be up to the Director of Local Government to determine whether or not action would be taken, I imagine. Okay. Do we have any idea or understanding about what the additional administrative burden of this and potential cost to council in administering this register would be?
Director Reynolds?
Through you, Lord Mayor. No, we haven't made an estimate of that, but we don't know.
Right. Okay, look, once again, Lord Mayor, not only is this a discriminatory motion or item, I think it will place an administrative burden on, noting what the Director said, but I think it would place an administrative burden on elected members. But also, and I've said this before, do not believe for a second that it will do anything to solve the problem it's attempting to solve. Say you have an elected member, we won't make any names up, but that gets contacted by 10 people in the course of, I think it's monthly, 10 people over the course of a month. 9 of those contacts are, hi councillor such and such, we're just wanting to talk to you about this development I've got up. Is it possible to have some, go over it and get some advice from you? And that's perfectly reasonable contact. I think everybody's probably received similar phone calls or emails. They would happily register those. Say that same elected member one day gets a phone call from somebody or has a coffee with somebody, and that person says, here's a bundle of money in a brown paper bag if you help me get the numbers for this development. I imagine if the elected member was inclined to undertake the behaviour that we're trying to tackle and cut out, that might accept that bundle of money, is going to not declare that as a contact that he received. Ultimately, because of the fact that it's self-reported, because of the fact that it's difficult to enforce, those doing the wrong thing aren't going to report the particular contacts that we're trying to identify in this policy. The only people that are going to follow the policy are the people that are already not doing the wrong thing. So all you're going to see is a list of contacts that are completely above board, and those contacts that are improper are the ones that an individual an elected member doing the wrong thing isn't going to record. They're already not interested. If they're behaving improperly, they're already not interested in following any sense of integrity or ethics or morality by doing the underhanded thing. They're not going to then report that on their contact register. So my worry is we're placing an administrative burden on all of us. We're going to place an administrative burden on the council. We're going to make it more difficult for those people, developers wanting to build in our city from contacting us and discriminating against them. It's also not going to do anything to solve this problem at all, the perceived problem. I just don't fundamentally see how mechanically it will actually tackle the problem that it's trying to solve. It's one of those things where it's all heart and all intention, but I don't think the actual result will be fundamentally anything. I couldn't speak against this motion any harder, Lord Mayor. I would urge everybody to vote against it. I ultimately think it's attempting to solve a problem that A, won't be able to solve, and B, doesn't exist.
Question probably for you, Lord Mayor, to the Director. When's the last time that there's been a case where there's been active impropriety, or someone who's been taken to court, or the like, with a development application or a developer in the city of Hobart?
It might need to be taken on notice. It's quite a big question, but Mr. Noy, did you want to try and respond to that?
Lord Mayor, none that I'm aware of in recent times, but there may be examples in other jurisdictions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, here we are. We've got a climate crisis. We've got a housing crisis. We've got traffic congestion. We've got all this stuff going down around us. And here we are tonight talking about something that there's no evidence it's ever actually happened. There's no, it's discriminatory. We're going down a real rabbit hole here in the slippery slope that's going to, every meeting we're going to be having is going to be bringing up all these ridiculous scenarios that may or may not happen. There's adequate legislation in place to stop all this sort of stuff. We've got all these crises going on. Here we are tonight spending hours debating about something that probably never going to happen. I accept that, it's nice to try and have everything wrapped up in a nice little bundle that's going to stop any potential problem, but this is just jumping at shadows. Surely we've got much better things here in this council and this chamber to do than go down this sort of thing in this current climate. I'm sorry, I just cannot support this, and I think we've got to have a good hard look at ourselves and look at what we're bringing, what motion we're bringing forward to this chamber to debate. It's not, this is just a total and utter waste of time at this current time. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the author of the report or the director? I'm just looking at under 6.5 in the definitions. It's got exempt contact, and it says that contact is not. It means we don't have to record if there's, meeting someone at a council forum or briefing or council meeting. But it also then in B says, does not involve the council member engaging with any discussion or communication with the developer on the planning or development proposal unless routine information only is conveyed. So to me that's suggesting that exempt contact means that you can actually meet with the developer on their planning application about their proposal and talk to them about everything except, you can talk to them about routine information only. Is that right?
That's correct, Lord Mayor.
So that means you wouldn't record that engagement about the development application?
Check the manager, but I believe that would be considered exempt conduct under this definition.
I think there might be a typo that's confusing the issue, Lord Mayor, in that definition.
What does it say? Well, what's the typo?
I think instead of unless routine information, I think it's the word unless is causing the confusion there, Lord Mayor. I think it's where routine information is conveyed.
All right. I'm a little unsure about that exempt contact, but
that Lord Mayor through the policy development.
I think so, and I think it would be really helpful for elected members, maybe when the policy comes through, for us to have a little table of the kind of places that have these kind of policies too. Sorry, I should be standing up. I know some of that was in Councillor Posselt's original motion, but maybe it's helpful for it to come from their offices as well. Councillor Dutta would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I am of the understanding that this is a report that has come out of a motion that the Council passed, and that motion, if my memory serves me right, was a motion by a Councillor of the South. And we debated this for quite some time, and this is simply a report that has come to us. And we simply feel we're going to be taking the same thing over and over again. There's no need for that, I think. All what we want to see is for a policy to come back to us, we will scrutinize it then, and then we agree which way we're going to go and we don't want to go. And I think at this stage, a motion was passed, we need to abide by that. A report has come to us in the form of a policy principles. We say yes today, we'll go back to the staff, come back to us with a policy, we will make a decision whether we accept it or not. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to put the motion, if no one's got anything further to say, which is items 1 to 4. All those in favour. But it has been amended by Alderman Zuko to finalise it, bring it back to the council. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Loberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 8 votes to 4.
Okay, we're moving on now to item 16, draft new policy, which is a flag management policy, moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by, I need a seconder for this, Alderman Bloomfield. Any discussion on this policy? Councillor Posselt?
Thanks. I just want to do a very simple amendment to the actual policy itself, which is to policy point 3.4, which currently reads, in general, the city will only consider flying flags of other countries to acknowledge days of national significance on request. The amendment would add and or in recognition of significant natural disasters.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Loberger. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Councillor Dutta? No? Okay, we'll just do the amendment, I think. All those in favour of that amendment, adding the natural disasters, say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Carried unanimously. Okay, Councillor Dutta, did you want to speak on the...
I just have a question with regards to flying the flag. My question is it not possible to also fly the First Nations flag with the Australian flag permanently? And are there restrictions or protocols we need to follow?
Who'd like to respond to that question?
Through you, Lord Mayor, can I please ask a clarification? Councillor Dutta, do you mean at the front of Town Hall? Because it is currently permanently flying at the rear of Town Hall.
Mean at the front.
Yep. There is nothing that prevents us from doing that.
So I would like to move an amendment that will also include that we have the First Nations flag flying permanently in the front as well.
Okay, so that would be maybe the staff can identify the best place to put that in the policies, but it's an addition to add it to the wording of the policy that we fly the Aboriginal flag at the front of the building with the Australian flag. Okay, need a seconder for that amendment. Seconded by Councillor Sherlock. All those in... did you want to speak to that?
Just a question. So is it just those two flags that are being flied permanently? Just those, they're the only two flags that would be?
Okay, any discussion on that? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Again say no. Carried unanimously. Any further discussion on the substantive, any more on the policy? Councillor Elliott.
Hoping we could add something to the policy just to clarify that the council doesn't... in the policy it refers to the council flies policy of a civic nature relevant to the city, and I'm not sure if there's space to make it explicit that the council doesn't fly policies related to political statements or beliefs unless there's a direct commitment from the council to do so. So, for example, any flags that are outside of this policy where a request comes in, that the delegation actually comes to the council to approve any potentially contentious or any requests of a political nature that actually comes to the council, where that delegation doesn't sit with the CEO.
So where would that go?
Probably would it be a new principle, I guess, on number 8 or half? Yeah, it'd be 3.8.
Is it not, if I can help, is that not covered in Part 9? I think it's covered in Part 9.
That's as an exclusion. So Part 9 talks about exclusion, and it won't undertake. That's political parties. This is more of a political...
Yeah, but it does not align with the city's vision.
We're getting debate across the chamber, so...
I'll just consider that for a moment.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd also just like to seek clarification.
Sorry,
are you still speaking?
I've always put that.
Okay, no, that's okay.
So you would be proposing to amend 9 to add does not approve requests from organisations or individuals who have.
It's actually more. I think it's probably a point under above half masting where it is that what I'm trying to achieve is that if there's anything, a request comes in that's potentially contentious or we aren't completely sure that it's something that council supports, that decision comes to the council rather than the CEO. I've provided as feedback. This one is a full policy for approval, isn't it?
So maybe it might be these will get reviewed, all policies get reviewed after 12 months, don't they? If you're not comfortable with how it's being administered, then perhaps do it.
There's a 12-month review period?
No, sorry, it is it'll be within 2 years. So
okay, that's right. If anything arises, I'll address it then. Thank you, though.
Any other discussion? I've got those 2 amendments to the policy. No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 17 is a memorial plaque. Would someone like to move that? Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Zuko. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 18 is local ALGA call for motions with a recommendation.
So
Deputy Lord Mayor.
I'll move the recommendation and ask if there are other motions for ALGA.
Okay, so seconded by, who would like to second this motion? Alderman Bloomfield. So I think this one's come, this is a proposal that's come from the staff, I think. Yep. Any further motions to add to the few hundred that'll go to ALGA, or few thousand? Okay, no discussion on this one. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 19.
Lord Mayor, I'd move that Mr. Is it Kachinka? Is that how you say his last name?
Mr. Noy?
Be given the opportunity to be the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Hobart. And just point out that Mr. Jeff Lang has been in this role for many years, which is quite a demanding role, particularly when there's fire, flood and probably pestilence involved for the city. So I think I'd certainly like to thank Mr. Lang for the work that he's done in this role, but also welcome Mr. Kachinka to take this role. So happy to move this recommendation.
Alderman Barakis. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 20, study tour and the recommendation of 3 points. Moved by Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Any discussion? Alderman
Just a couple
Zuko.
of questions, Lord Mayor. I've got no problem about the study tour. I've always supported study tours, but how do we come up with these two names? Were they nominated? Did they nominate themselves? I'm just curious, Lord Mayor.
My understanding is that they requested the study tour.
No, can I give
please.
a point of explanation? I don't know if I'm the best to do that. Perhaps Ms. Cooper would be better to do this, but I chair the Futures portfolio, and it was certainly suggested that seeing some of those examples in Brisbane would be useful, and I think it would also be useful for Alderman Bloomfield as a new member of council to also see some of those examples as well. But
Alderman Zuko, I think it's open to anyone else.
Yeah, that's the point. To my point of view, don't get me wrong, we normally sort of people are entitled to nominate as well. And especially now that the deputies mentioned newly elected members, we've got quite a number of newly elected members, and I actually would welcome all the newly elected members to attend. That's my view, because it enhances their ability to perform their role. So I'm not going to put you all on the spot, but that's my view. That's why I asked those questions.
Any further nominations to attend this trip? Being none, I will put that. All those in favour say aye. Please say no. Carried unanimously. Item 21 is a motion from Councillor Elliott on sorry, Councillor Dutta, what was that?
It's 2 minutes break before we get into this. I have to be sitting here to have my face on, and I need to go for a bit of comfort break.
I think we'll just we might do a 5-minute break now, and then we might need to convene dinner after we finish the open agenda. We'll do a quick 5-minute now for toilet break. In the meeting. Councillor
First of all, I have a couple of questions, please, before I move the motion. Through you, Chair, to the acting CEO. Did the council engage a appropriately qualified historian to prepare the statements of fact that the council has made and promoted about William Crowther?
We'll have to take that on notice, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. And what cross-checking was done by the council to ensure that the statements being made through the Crowther reinterpreted artworks were accurate and reliable?
Sorry, Councillor Elliott, I think you're getting into that you shouldn't draw any inferences or make any imputations with your questions.
I don't think there was I just asked what checking was done by council to make sure that the statements being made under the Crowther reinterpreted were accurate and reliable. I haven't made any imputation in there.
I think if this is the last one, but this, the staff can't be a tool in a motion. So I just think keep it.
I don't believe it was, but yes. And has a city...
sorry, do you want that one answered?
You take it on notice?
We can attempt to answer that if
okay,
the Director wants to.
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Lord Mayor. The nature of an artwork is that it can be factual or representative of any kind of story. We're not in a position that we would actually challenge the factual base of an artwork. That's why it was an artwork.
Thank you. And has the city at any point invited historians who disagree with the history being communicated by the council to present their views to the council?
I think I can just answer that it was the whole process was open for public submission, so everyone was invited.
Thank you, no problem. So I'll move the motion as listed on the agenda.
Seconded by Alderman Zuko.
Thank you. So Professor Stephen Petro authored the article "The Last Man: The Mutilation of William Lunny." Professor Petro also stated on a local ABC radio that he did not support the removal of the William Crowther statue and that history has many perspectives. This motion isn't asking you to undo the previous council's decision to remove the statue. It also doesn't ask you to vote on Crowther's guilt or innocence. What it does ask is that in the interests of fairness and natural justice, that you support the many perspectives that Professor Petro spoke about being heard. The motion also asks you to acknowledge that there are key information that the council has communicated and promoted as fact that is unproven, known to be false or disputed by historians. For a council that talks so much about evidence-based decision making, I find this very troubling. It also asks you to agree that any statement that the Aboriginal community in its entirety want the statue removed is incorrect. In 2012, the council's position was that the William Crowther statue was of high significance, even with the report acknowledging that Crowther was associated with controversy over the treatment of Aboriginal remains. In 2012, the statue was highly valued, but fast forward to today, and the council now have a report that says that the statue is a detractor from Franklin Square. I have serious doubts about the reliability and objectivity of the new report, given much of the background information they've relied on is again unproven, known to be false or disputed by highly reputable sources. We all know that the removal of the statue will set a massive precedent, not only because of the widespread implications, but also because we are talking about an individual, a person whose descendants are living among us now in our community. Because of this, council must have absolute clarity on the reason why the statue is being removed. Without this, I don't see how the council can have any shred of integrity or the ability to respond to future requests fairly and consistently. I want to ask you to take a moment and consider how you will answer this question. Why was the William Crowther statue that stood in Franklin Square for over 130 years, that was paid for by the community, removed? Please take a moment to think about how you're going to answer that question. Did you tell yourself it was because Crowther took William Lunny's skull? Did you remind yourself that this was never proven and that the inquiry was inconclusive? Do you not believe that one is innocent until proven guilty? Are you aware that there are conflicting claims that the skull was sent to Edinburgh or London, which are refuted by experts? Are you aware that the skull that some believed was Lunny's that was buried in the northwest was actually found to be a female skull? And are you aware that since Professor Petro wrote his article in 1997, that additional evidence has become available that supports the view that Crowther was not responsible? Did you tell yourself it must go because Crowther removed Lanny's hands, feet and skeleton? I hope not, as reliable experts attribute this to Dr. Stokel and the Royal Society. Did blaming Crowther for exhuming Lanny's body feature in your answer? If so, this is again disputed by experts, including Professor Petro, who attributed this to Dr. Stokel. Did you convince yourself that it was because Dr. Crowther sought the bones of Aboriginal people? If this is the case, then we'll be removing statues, changing names, demolishing buildings at the rate of knots. However shocked we are by this now, it was common practice then. This was a time of great scientific investigation, as Darwin's theory of evolution was being explored. And Dr. Crowther was a genuine man of scientific inquiry. It was also a time when radical medical procedures by today's standards were being pioneered and where life-saving discoveries were being made because of the dissection of bodies. Did you ask yourself, is it fair to judge the past by today's standards? Many historians argue that this presentism is a way of truly feeling, is a way to feel morally superior and feeding self-congratulations. Perhaps you told yourself that the statue was removed because the Aboriginal community are offended by it. If so, did you disregard the fact that the Circular Head Aboriginal community, which is our second largest Aboriginal community, are so strongly against removal of the statue that they are seeking an inquiry to this whole process at the federal level? Do their views not matter? Dr. Crowther was the Premier of an entire state. He was widely respected. The views of all Tasmanians matter, not just those who lobby the loudest. Was the removal because the statue is an obvious symbol of British arrival and colonisation? Can I please ask for a 2-minute extension?
Probably less, 1 minute. Moved by Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Alderman Brackus. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Baracus, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Loberger, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Lord Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Bloomfield and the Deputy Lord Mayor. It's carried, Lord Mayor, 10 votes to 2.
Was the removal because the statue is an obvious symbol of British arrival and colonisation? If so, tearing down the statue of an individual is appalling tokenism and virtue signalling. It's also grossly unjust to Dr. Crowther, his legacy, his descendants, and the thousands of people that paid for his statue and regarded him so highly. Did you give any weight to the significant good that Dr. Crowther did? Beyond his renowned medical and surgical expertise and political and business success, Dr. Crowther provided free medical care to the poor and made large donations to charities and community projects. Did his advocacy for increasing healthcare resources and the damaging impacts of alcohol feature in your thinking? How about his role in ending the public flogging of convicts? What about his vast and highly valued contributions to our museums and his recognition with honorary fellowship and gold medal with the Royal College of Surgeons? Or how about the fact that his funeral is the largest ever seen in the state and he's on record as being remembered for his profound sympathy and kindness? As you can see, there's a lot to consider and explore. I've been approached by community members, descendants of Crowthers, and also multiple historians who are eager to share with us and the community their view on what Crowther did and did not do and provide their primary sources. A vote against this is saying no, we don't want to hear the view of experts and we don't want the community to know either. Thank you.
Further discussion? Is there discussion? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Say no. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Baracus, Councillor Elliott.
And against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Loberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor. That's lost Lord Mayor, 3 votes to 9.
Okay, now we've got another motion from Councillor Elliott, underutilised bedrooms incentive. Councillor Elliott, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. Yes, I'll move the motion as listed on the agenda there.
By Alderman Zuko.
So this motion is, as listed, it's intended to be a positive action and something we can take action on now, because as the numbers are all in front of you in terms of the motion and the background there, but there are thousands of unoccupied bedrooms in our city, and given the severity of the housing crisis, I do think we should be looking at especially positive incentive actions that we can take to incentivise people to maximise the use of existing properties. I noticed in the admin response that it talks about the rating strategy, but also looking at the timeline for that strategy isn't due to be finalised until February 2024, which means realistically nothing will be coming out of it until, mid-2024. So I'd be disappointed if it was voted against on the basis of being included in that strategy, because we have plenty of precedents and examples where standalone items are taken or are progressed without waiting for a bigger body of work to be resolved. And given the dire situation we're in, we've got students that have to return back into Hobart to finalise their studies in order to be eligible for their studies. We've got a large cohort of older women, especially over age 50, who would really relish the opportunity to move into an established home. So that's what this is about. It's asking the council asking the officers to work up a program that would come back to us, where the principles are that people would be encouraged to make available empty bedrooms in their principal place of residence, and in return get a rebate discount on their rates for doing so, because they are taking on there are risks involved. Not everyone is comfortable doing so. So I think we should be looking at a carrot approach to make the use of existing housing we have available. Thank you.
Alderman Brock.
Just a question at this point, Lord Mayor. In the through you, just right at the end of the administrator's response, and it was touched on by Councillor Elliott, where it says it is therefore proposed that the rebate program will be considered as part of the city's broader review. Is that implying that it already will be, or is it sort of responding to this motion? If passed, it will be incorporated into the strategy.
No.
So if this motion is passed,
the question where it says it is therefore proposed that is that it?
Lord Mayor, if I may, we would look to include it in the strategy review now.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Further discussion. Sorry.
Given that we are, as a council, presently looking at rate reviews and negotiating how our rates will in fact be determined this year, I feel this particular motion is actually hijacking the process. It's jumping the queue, if you like. There is nothing in this motion that is so special, so unique, or so substantial that it deserves preferential treatment. At a time when landlords have unprecedented high rental rates, it beggars belief that the council should supplicate these landlords with reductions in rates at the cost to every other ratepayer. 10% of rates will have little to no effect at all when you consider how much that equates on a weekly basis. And if you think about it, who would reasonably alter their decision to rent out a room if you're going to get $10, $20, $30 a week rebate, when in fact you're going to get $150 to $250 a week rent? Tokenism at its worst, and it unfortunately does not support the people who need the support, being those who are going to be paying the rent, not the people supplying it.
Alderman Barker.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm just not sure whether, I'm unsure as to whether or not the motion's been properly read, because we aren't talking, just reading the actual motion itself, we're not talking about landlords here at all. The motion does specify principal place of residence. So we're talking about houses where the owner of the house is also the owner occupier. So we're not.
The whole point of actually having a rental will make you a landlord.
That wasn't really a point of order, but it is helpful, probably information for Alderman Barkas, maybe. I don't know.
Well, look, I understand what a landlord is, Lord Mayor. And I'll just posit that in the wording of the motion, the intent is to where homeowners have an underutilised room, rather than leaving it utilised to then put it out on the market and become a landlord. So it's effectively incentivising people who are just owner-occupiers to make surplus rooms available. Given that we have I'm largely, if I'm being honest, agnostic as to whether or not this should be done immediately or whether it would be better to do it as part of the strategy. I do think it's definitely something that should be considered, because I think if we talk a lot about housing affordability in this council. We have since I was elected in 2018, and we do often say that we need to pull out all the stops. We need to pull what levers we can to try and incentivise policies that will make housing more affordable. And if there's methods, if there's initiatives that we can put in that will make rooms available, because at the end of the day, the issue that we have is a supply and demand issue. There's more people looking for homes or looking for a roof over their head than what there are available rooms. That's why the costs keep going up. If we can make some of those rooms available to people that are struggling to afford a place to rent, it's not this. It won't be a silver bullet solution. We're not going to pass this motion and solve housing affordability, but it's another potential lever that can be pulled that can make just that many more homes or rooms, available to those that might need it. We might get this report come back and it might get looked into by officers and they might say it's unfeasible. But I think we would be leaving potential solutions off the table if we don't at least look into something like this.
Further discussion on Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor, it's actually quite surprising that here we are crying about the shortage of accommodation, people in the streets and all that. Someone comes up with, whether or not it's something that's been flagged before or not, with a potential way of getting someone who's struggling to find a place to live or stay an opportunity to find a roof over their head, because that's what it's all about. It's about endeavouring to see how many ways or what ways we can as a council assist in helping someone get a roof over their head. Property owners and principal places of residence, not necessarily landlords, Lord Mayor. I'm a landlord, but I live in my principal place of residence in Western Bay. I wish I had a spare room, I don't. But that's the whole idea of it. We could also even potentially add to it, and I think it'd be good when a report comes back. You could probably add the words, and I don't want to make any changes or amendments, but it could be taken on board, Lord Mayor, that the words property owners and tenants are rebated by the council. But I don't want to change the amendment, because that could be part of the report. And what I mean there is the property owners of a principal place of residence can get a rebate as the owners of the property. And the council it could be an innovative way of providing an incentive for those people who actually do rent a house and have got a spare room as tenants, not the property owners, on how they could actually get a benefit as well from the council in some way, if they're providing a roof over somebody's head. I actually am quite concerned that this has been attacked as a ridiculous motion. It is not. It is actually quite a very good motion, because I worked very heavily with the late Alderman Haig in the 90s on homelessness. I actually employed quite a number of people off the streets. We worked tirelessly those days to find rooms and accommodation for young people on the streets. We even found a number of garages that were revamped into a bedroom, and the young people were using the the facilities inside the house. So there's a lot of innovative ways of giving someone the opportunity to have a roof over their head. So anyone that attacks any person for endeavouring to find solutions to the crisis we have, I find it's absolutely... I won't say what's in my head. Lord Mayor, I fully support this, and I do hope that irrespective of the fact that we're potentially going to look at it, it's like anything. We had two notices of motion that were dealt with very, very quickly because it was deemed important to go down the track of registrars straight after the election. I'm on the record as saying, Lord Mayor, that we seem to, every time there's an issue regarding homelessness, we have our roundtables, and I've said this publicly, here we go again. But this is an idea that could work, and this is an idea that if we acted on it very quickly and swiftly, we might be able to get a few people out of their cars on the streets and living in tents into a room somewhere. And if we can achieve that, if we can achieve one, we've done good. And to my point of view, I do ask all elected members to support this because I think this is a very good way of us demonstrating to our community that we do care for those people that are sleeping in their cars, living on the streets. Lord Mayor, I'm not going to move the amendment, but I do hope that we get a report back and the idea comes back on how we can also assist those tenants because of those very bad landlords.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to commend Councillor Elliott for bringing this on. It's an interesting idea, but I don't feel that it's actually workable. I do think it would be quite a confusing situation for renters and just citizens of the greater Hobart area to have one council with one set of rules and all the other councils having slightly different rules, or no rebates in fact. It does strike me as more of a state government policy area, this one. And I do actually support the final points that Alderman Bloomfield made. I don't think now is the time to be further subsidising property owners. There are many things that we could do, but ultimately, at the end of the day, spending more ratepayers' money on something like this, I just can't support this. I would prefer to wait for the rating strategy to make decisions like this about rating. So I will be voting no. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, there's already organised programs that do this, especially for international students. UTAS, the colleges, high schools, they all have programs where they find accommodation in people's houses. So you have homestay hosts. And the incentive is the cultural benefits of living with international students, but also the income that hosts generate. And there's literally hundreds of people across, hundreds of homes across Tasmania that have students that live in their houses. And the benefits, I think, are quite significant. There's also, websites called Flatmates, and other platforms where you can find share houses to live in as well. So spare rooms are advertised. What we're talking about here is new people coming into the market who might not have ever rented a room to anyone. And will a rebate be the incentive on their rates, or will the rent be an incentive? And I can recall in the past where UTAS has advertised because they really needed accommodation for students because there wasn't enough accommodation, where they've advertised for new hosts. And the advantage of that method is that the host families or the people looking to rent their rooms out are also screened. So you know that who is offering the room is a bona fide person, that there's going to be rules and regulations so that anyone living in your house knows the rules, that the arrangements are done through a body, which is the university. So if there are issues, the university or whoever the hosting body is can deal with those issues rather than have just strangers coming to your house if you're not used to having people living in your house. So I think a more organised program is much more sensible than just giving anyone a rebate to offer their rooms up, and that means we've got to monitor those rooms to make sure those rooms are occupied. And how do we do that? There's another, additional expense on the council. So is this our role, to give away money to people to rent out their rooms? Or should there just be better platforms so people can be encouraged and also to find people? But if you're looking for someone to live in your house, you want to be sure of that person as well. You want to have references. You want to have an organised program. So I won't be supporting tonight's notice of motion because I think there's better ways, and the providers of accommodation should be looking at how they can incentivise people to move into houses by having a register maybe of people looking to share houses, both from the landlord and from a tenant perspective, and maybe do a mix and match sort of thing rather than the council taking the responsibility to find people a home in people's houses by offering rebates.
Further discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Lord Mayor. Look, I would echo Councillor Lobo's sentiment in applauding Councillor Elliott for trying to solve an issue in the housing market. I mean, it is the biggest problem facing Hobart is housing, and I think we need to have an open mind with regard to any idea that may reduce the demand for shelter accommodation, that may provide a roof over people's heads, especially those people who are vulnerable. The issue I have with this particular motion is a multitude, in fact. So I think many people in the public don't fully understand how budgeting in council works and the effects of discounted rates for one party. But basically, if we discount rates to one party, then every other party has to pay more. And that's fine in multiple different areas. There are valid reasons why we should do that. However, in this instance, should a landlord, or a property owner I should say, have the financial position where they own a property with significant spare bedrooms in place, I would suggest that their wealth doesn't really warrant us subsidising their rates and pushing that cost burden onto other people who may be less affluent, who may not have the spare bedrooms because they can't afford them. While incentivising people to rent out their spare room is a good idea in principle, a financial incentive will be ineffectual simply because the dollar figure is not big enough. Even if you waived rates, the income that would be gained from just two renters in your house would outweigh the benefit gained from a rates rebate. So I don't think that it would be particularly effective. I think it would be a fairly significant administrative cost burden. Not only that, but the burden of proof becomes quite challenging because once you're an adult, what's stopping you from claiming that you're renting out your house, spare bedrooms, to your adult children who are 18? That would be a very difficult thing to police. So I think that it's problematic. I think that the idea it comes from the right place, but I just don't think that this is a workable or the right solution, so I won't be voting for it.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank Councillor Elliott for this. I also saw the report that suggested that there were so many vacant rooms across Australia, and I think we have a real problem as a community where we have large houses with people rattling around in them, probably myself included at the moment, because we haven't let out our spare room again, which we will at some stage soon, once we've decided to do that again. But we have large houses, and I think there's some data coming out from the state government, but large houses in relation to like 3 or 4 bedroom places with diminishing household sizes. And it was, and I might ask through you, Lord Mayor, to Mr Noy, I think I brought something in relation to ancillary dwellings and how we could look at refurbishing houses so that we could in fact have them as strata titled or easily changed. So just through you, Lord Mayor, where are we up to with that report, Mr Noy?
Mr Noy.
Yes, Lord Mayor, I understand it has been drafted, so it's imminent.
Okay. So that might help with our consideration in relation to incentives or otherwise. I think that body of work that Ms McDonnell is doing in relation to rebates, making use of incentives or otherwise in trying to get, particularly looking at short stay accommodation and disincentives of that, I think is something with differential rates that we should be looking at as well. And so I look forward to that coming back to us very soon.
Any further discussion? No? Oh yeah, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wanted to speak before Councillor Harvey, but unfortunately...
Oh, I'm sorry.
All I want to say is this, that I totally support the points made by Councillor Harvey and Councillor Persson. I think there are a number of issues, and I think they have made the point very well, and I would have difficulty supporting this as well. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I won't be long because I think everybody's already made the points that I wanted to make, but I do also want to really commend everybody who's spoken around the table. I also want to thank Councillor Elliott for bringing the motion. But yes, unfortunately, I won't be supporting this motion either tonight. Alongside what Councillor Lohberger has said, I would also want to wait for the rating strategy that's coming forward. And yeah, it just doesn't sit well with me if I try to think about this motion in one sentence. And it might not be accurate, but if I am to think about it in one sentence, it's simply that is Hobart City Council willing to give rebates to people who have spare rooms in their house and not rebates to people who are looking for rooms to stay in. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Elliott, would you like to do a right of reply sum up?
Yes, I will, just briefly. So this motion came about because I was actually texted by a community member who spoke of their mother, their elderly mother, who's at home in an empty house.
Point of order, Lord Mayor, this is new information.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Right. What isn't new information? This motion was never intended to be to bring in hundreds of people to houses, but given the seriousness of the situation, I would have thought I viewed it as a carrot approach that might, even if only a dozen or half a dozen people were to be housed through this, I would have thought that was a good thing. A lot of people don't know about the programs that are available, the homestay programs. I had a message from someone who clearly didn't, so I think there's an opportunity for better promotion there. And I tried to consider the situations around the burden of proof and making sure that they were genuine new arrangements in the principles there that I had mapped out, where it was, a stacked deck from both parties at the start and at the end, and that bedroom couldn't have been occupied for 12 months before. So I guess it was the figure that there are literally thousands of bedrooms out there tonight that are empty, and the fact that we have people looking, and then I started to think, well, what can we do about it? So I thought this would have been a short-term incentive thing that might have brought some people's attention to the resources they have available, and to start to think, maybe I could do that. So just a way of opening their eyes to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Show of hands, all those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly.
And against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor. That's lost Lord Mayor. 4 votes to 8.
It's 20 to 8, and I'm going to propose that we adjourn now for a dinner break till 8 p.m. And then return. We've got just questions without notice and the other item that was moved into the open, the submission, when we come back, and then the closed item. So I'll adjourn the meeting and return at 8 o'clock, please. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Open the meeting. Are there any other elected members in the...
Yeah, they're coming. Which can then get stretched out.
Like a bell. Okay, so we're now going to move to item 12 on the closed agenda, which was moved to the open. This is another submission. Lord Mayor, Councillor Posselt, any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Then say no. Now we've got responses to questions without notice. Would someone like to move those? Moved by Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. All those to be received and noted. All those in favour say aye. No. Are there any new questions without notice that anyone would like to register?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to check in, ask a question around the status of the monuments policy, if we have a timeline around that. Yep. And also, probably a lot of us would have seen the report came out around from, I think it was the Integrity Commission, around direct appointments. So my question is around how many direct appointments has the council made in the past 2 years, and the status of the employment. So was it for a direct appointment for a fixed-term role, permanent role, casual role? So some statistics around direct appointments in the past 2 years, please. Thank you.
Okay, so those two have been taken notice. If there's no further questions on notice, I'll ask that someone move us into the closed portion. Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Barakis, will now move into the closed portion of the meeting. And thank you for anyone who's